This story is a work of fiction inspired by real-life emotional and psychological dynamics in relationships. It aims to raise awareness about control, manipulation, and emotional abuse. Any resemblance to actual persons or events is purely coincidental. I met Daniel at a rooftop birthday party in the middle of spring. The night air was cool, and the city lights below shimmered like a living painting. He was tall, confident, with this smile that could melt the walls off any introvert. I was there with a friend, just to get out of the house, not expecting anything or anyone. But Daniel was different. He noticed things. He listened. When I told him I worked in a nonprofit for kids with disabilities, he didn't just nod. He asked questions. Deep ones. And when he told me he ran his own marketing firm, I admired how driven and ambitious he sounded. The spark was instant. It was like I'd known him forever. We started texting the very next morning. What began as occasional flirty messages turned into daily good mornings and long phone calls late into the night. Within a few weeks, we were inseparable. He brought me flowers on random Tuesdays, remembered every little thing I told him, even my favorite brand of cereal. When he asked me to be his girlfriend after only a month, I said yes without hesitation. And when he told me he loved me 2 weeks after that, I said it back, feeling my heart finally safe in someone else's hands. He made me feel protected, chosen, seen. But there were small things too, things I brushed off. Like how he would joke, "Don't let any guys hug you for too long, okay?" Or how he'd give me a little side glance when I mentioned hanging out with male coworkers. Once, I told him about a compliment I got from a barista, and he went quiet for the rest of the evening. But I told myself it was just passion. He just cared. He wasn't like the cold, emotionally unavailable guys I'd dated before. Daniel was warm and intense. A man who knew what he wanted, and what he wanted was me. When we moved in together 6 months later, it felt like a dream. We painted the apartment together, bought matching mugs, and argued about which side of the bed was better. Everything was new and thrilling. He said, "Now I can take care of you properly." And I believed him. But even dreams have shadows. I didn't know it yet, but those tiny red flags were starting to grow roots, quietly, beneath the surface. The first time Daniel got genuinely upset with me, it was over a dress. We had dinner plans with some of his colleagues, and I wore a fitted maroon dress I'd owned for years, nothing revealing, but elegant enough to feel confident in. When I stepped out of the bedroom, his expression changed. He didn't smile. He didn't say I looked beautiful. Instead, he asked, "Is that what you're wearing?" I laughed, thinking he was joking. But he wasn't. "I just don't think it's appropriate," he said. "You don't need other guys staring at you like that." I stood in front of the mirror, suddenly self-conscious. "It's just a dress," I said gently. He sighed and turned away. "Fine, do whatever you want." That silent disappointment, he didn't need to yell. His words lingered like a bruise. I changed into jeans and a blouse. After that, the small criticisms became more frequent. If I posted a selfie on Instagram, he'd comment, "Looking good. Who's that for?" If I laughed at a text from a male coworker, he'd ask, "You sure he's just a friend?" It was confusing. I told myself it was just how men get when they really love someone. Maybe he was just insecure because he cared so much. I tried to reassure him, holding his hand and saying, "It's you. It's always been you." But his behavior slowly shifted from requests to rules. He asked me to stop hanging out alone with guy friends, even ones I'd known since high school. "It just makes me uncomfortable," he'd say. A woman in a committed relationship shouldn't need male attention. Then came the social media rules: no more selfies, no replying to DMs from men, even if they were harmless. I stopped wearing certain clothes when we went out. I deleted a few contacts. I told myself love was about compromise. At times, I'd protest gently. "Don't you trust me?" I asked once. He responded, "It's not about trust. It's about respect. If you respected me, you wouldn't want to make me feel this way." Those words echoed in my mind. If you respected me. It twisted my feelings, made me believe I was the one being selfish. I wanted to be a good partner. I wanted to make him feel safe. Still, deep down, I started to feel like I was shrinking. Like I was losing little parts of myself to make the relationship easier. I stopped going out as much. I made excuses when friends invited me. I even second-guessed compliments, wondering if smiling back would be a betrayal. Daniel never raised his voice. He never hit me. That made it harder to see the problem clearly. But I was learning something painful. Control doesn't always come as violence. It often comes dressed as love. It was a lazy Saturday afternoon when my best friend, Maya, called me out for the first time. We were sitting on my balcony with iced coffee, talking about a concert we had dreamed of going to for years. When I told her I wasn't sure if I could make it, she gave me a look, one that held both worry and something close to frustration. "You're not sure, or Daniel's not okay with it?" she asked, her tone calm but piercing. I laughed it off. It's a lot of people. And you know how he gets about concerts. Too many guys, too much attention. I just don't want to start something." Maya didn't laugh. She leaned forward, brows furrowed. "Babe, that's not normal. That's not okay." It stung a little, hearing her say that. But deep inside, a part of me agreed with her. Still, I defended him like I always did. He's just protective. He had a bad past relationship. I understand him. She shook her head. "You've changed, and not in the growing up kind of way. You're quieter. You second-guess everything before you speak. You used to dance like no one was watching. Now you're always watching yourself." I didn't respond. I didn't know how. It wasn't just Maya. Friends had started noticing. I declined invites more often. When I did come out, I was always checking my phone, texting Daniel updates, making sure I wasn't gone too long. I told myself it was love, being accountable, being respectful. But now I wasn't so sure. Then there was Jason. Jason had been a close friend for years. Easygoing, harmless, the kind of guy who made everyone feel welcome. Daniel hated him, claimed he was too touchy, too flirty, even though Jason never crossed a boundary with me. "He's the type of guy who waits around for girls and relationships," Daniel said once. "I don't like him. I don't want you hanging out with him alone." I rolled my eyes at first, but eventually, I stopped inviting Jason over. I even skipped his birthday dinner, telling him I had a cold. The guilt sat heavy in my chest, but I convinced myself I was keeping peace at home. The more I gave in to Daniel's discomforts, the more control he gained over my life. And the more I distanced myself from people who truly cared. But there was still a voice inside me, small, quiet, and barely breathing, that knew something was wrong. That voice stirred again when Maya hugged me goodbye that day and whispered, "You don't know your life," to his insecurities. Those words haunted me. I was beginning to realize, love shouldn't feel like permission. And the people who really love you, they don't clip your wings to feel taller. It was supposed to be a celebration. Daniel and I had just moved into our new apartment, a beautiful 2-bedroom on the 4th floor, with warm wooden floors and a view of the city's skyline. We invited a small group of friends over for a housewarming party. There was music, snacks, laughter. For the first time in weeks, I felt like myself again. Maya came, of course. So did Jason, along with a few mutual friends from college. The atmosphere buzzed with energy. People were relaxed, catching up, sharing old jokes. For once, Daniel seemed fine. He was charming, attentive, even cracking jokes with Jason, which surprised me. Midway through the night, someone suggested we play a light-hearted game, Truth or Dare, Couples Edition. Groans and giggles filled the room, but everyone agreed. The dares were silly. Someone had to sing a love song. Someone else had to wear socks on their hands. Then came my turn. Jason, half laughing and a little tipsy, said, "I dare you to sit on someone's lap for the next round." It was harmless, playful. Everyone laughed, and before I could even respond, Jason patted his knee with an exaggerated grin. "Come on, don't be scared," he teased. I rolled my eyes, chuckled, and sat down lightly, just to play along. It lasted no more than 30 seconds before we moved on. I got up right after and returned to my spot beside Daniel. But something had shifted. Daniel's smile had disappeared. His arm around my shoulder went stiff. His eyes locked onto Jason, cold and unmoving. And I felt the tension seep into the air like smoke in a closed room. He didn't say anything right away, but I knew that look. After the party, once everyone had left and the door clicked shut behind the last guest, Daniel went silent. He began collecting empty cups and bottles methodically, his jaw clenched, his movements tight. I followed him into the kitchen. "You okay?" I asked gently. He didn't look at me. "I'm fine." I knew that tone. That not fine tone wrapped in pretend calm. "Daniel, it was a joke. It was part of the game." Everyone was laughing. He dropped a cup into the trash with more force than necessary. "You sat on another man's lap, in our home. Do you even hear yourself?" I blinked. It was for 30 seconds. It wasn't like that. His voice was sharp now. "You made me look like a fool. Do you think people didn't notice? Do you think they didn't laugh behind my back?" I stood still. The warmth from earlier was gone. My chest felt heavy. "Daniel, it wasn't disrespect. It was a joke." He turned to me, eyes flaring. "No, it was you choosing to disrespect me again." And in that moment, something broke. Not just the night, not just the mood, but a quiet trust one didn't even realize I still held. I realized this wasn't about Jason. It wasn't about a silly dare. It was about control. And about how easily he turned love into shame. That night didn't end, it unraveled. After his initial outburst, I tried to calm things down. I reached for his arm, tried to touch his shoulder, tried to explain. But he pulled away from me like I was something dirty. "Don't," he said sharply. "Don't act like you don't know what you did." I stared at him, heart pounding. It was a dare, Daniel. A stupid party game. You think I'd really do something to humiliate you on purpose? He looked at me then, not with hurt in his eyes, but suspicion. "You've always had a thing for Jason, haven't you?" I felt my face burn with shock. "What? Are you serious right now?" "I've seen how you act around him. You light up. You laugh more. You never used to be that way with me." I blinked, stunned. "Daniel, that's not true. You're twisting everything." He laughed bitterly. "Of course I am. That's what I do, right? Twist things. Gaslight. Control. Isn't that what you tell your friends?" My mouth opened, but nothing came out. He was throwing my own words at me, words I hadn't even fully admitted to myself. Maybe Maya had said them. Maybe he'd overheard a conversation, read something. Or maybe he just knew. Because control is smart like that, it learns your language and uses it against you. I tried again. "You're not seeing this clearly. I wasn't trying to hurt you." "But you did." His voice dropped, suddenly quiet. "You disrespected me. In our home. In front of people who look up to me." "I'm not a symbol," I snapped, my voice shaking. "I'm your partner, not your reflection." He stared at me, as if I'd just spoken in a foreign language. Like he didn't recognize me anymore. And maybe, in that moment, I didn't recognize myself either. Then I said it. Maybe out of pain. Maybe out of anger. Maybe finally out of clarity. "You're not hurt, Daniel. You're just insecure and controlling." The words hung in the room like smoke. He went still. His expression didn't change, but something in the air did. He walked out of the room without a word and shut the bedroom door behind him. I stood alone in the living room, surrounded by empty bottles, discarded cups, and the echo of music that had stopped playing hours ago. The silence was louder than any fight. That night, I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying the party over and over. The laughter. The moment. The lap. His face. My voice. Was I wrong? Was I too flirty? Was I really the problem? But the more I replayed it, the more I understood. His anger wasn't about the party. It was about control. It always had been. From the dress, to the friends, to the silence after every disagreement. This was never just about love. This was about power. The next morning was eerily quiet. Daniel acted like nothing happened. He got up early, made coffee, even offered me some, as if he hadn't accused me of betrayal just hours before. His calmness felt more unnerving than his anger. I took the coffee, my hands trembling slightly, and said nothing. I didn't know what to say. Maybe part of me was still waiting for an apology, for him to admit he overreacted. But none came. Instead, he sat across from me at the dining table and asked, "You okay?" It was a trap question, and we both knew it. If I said no, I'd reopen the wound. If I said yes, I'd be pretending too. I just nodded. The next few days followed the same rhythm. Polite, empty, careful. But beneath it, the unease simmered. He didn't bring up Jason. He didn't bring up the party. But I caught him looking at my phone screen a few times when I was texting, lingering too long when I mentioned Maya. One night, I broke down in the shower. Not just over the fight, but over the pattern. I cried for the woman I used to be. For the energy I wasted trying to avoid landmines. For the lies I told myself just to keep the peace. I sat on the shower floor, hot water pouring over me, and whispered aloud to no one, "This isn't love." The next day, I called my mom. I hadn't spoken to her much since moving in with Daniel. I think part of me was ashamed. She had always taught me to be strong, to know my worth. And here I was, shrinking. She listened quietly as I told her what happened at the party. Then she asked a question that froze me. If you had a daughter, would you want her to stay in a relationship like this? That question shattered me. Because the answer was immediate. No. Never. So why was I allowing it for myself? That night, I sat in bed and began journaling, something I hadn't done in months. I wrote everything down. The dress fight. The social media rules. The disrespect conversations. The way I started dressing differently, talking less, smiling with filters on. It filled pages and pages. Reading it all in one place was like seeing a mirror I couldn't ignore anymore. It wasn't one bad night. It wasn't one overreaction. It was a pattern, a long, calculated erosion of my self-worth. Daniel wasn't just insecure. He was trying to control the narrative of who I was allowed to be. And suddenly, clarity arrived, not in anger, but in stillness. I didn't need him to see it. I didn't need him to agree. I just needed to accept that I had been giving someone the power to rewrite me. That had to stop. The turning point wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, just me, sitting at the edge of our bed, while Daniel scrolled through his phone like nothing was broken between us. I looked at him for a long time. Not with anger. Not even with sadness. Just stillness. The kind that comes when your soul is finally tired of pretending. "I need to talk to you," I said. He looked up, slightly annoyed. "What now?" I took a breath. "I'm not happy, Daniel. I haven't been for a long time." He narrowed his eyes. "Because of that stupid party?" "No," I replied calmly. "Because I've spent the last year walking on eggshells. And I'm tired." He scoffed. "So what, you're going to blame me now? You're playing the victim." I didn't respond to the bait. I just kept going. "You've made me feel like everything I do is wrong. You've controlled what I wear, who I talk to, how I act. And I let it happen. I lost myself trying to keep you comfortable." His tone turned mocking. "So you think I'm the villain now? After everything I've done for you?" "I've given you everything." "You've given me fear," I said. My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. Fear of saying the wrong thing. Of laughing too loud. Of existing in a way that doesn't revolve around your insecurities. He stood up then, as if rising would give him authority. "You're being dramatic. You're blowing everything out of proportion." And that's when I knew he would never see it. "Not truly. I'm staying at Maya's for a while," I said, standing too. "I need space. And I need to feel like a person again." He laughed, shaking his head. "You won't last 2 days without me. You're emotional. You're running away from something that's your fault." I didn't respond. I walked into the closet, pulled out a small suitcase, and started packing. He didn't stop me. He didn't yell. He just watched. And honestly, that was harder than if he had begged or screamed. Because it confirmed what I feared most. I was never really loved. I was owned. I stayed with Maya that night. She hugged me without questions, handed me a cup of tea, and said, "I'm proud of you." I cried again, not because I was sad, but because for the first time, someone said those words and meant them without conditions. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in months. No tension in my chest. No dread about being too much or too little. Just quiet. I wasn't free yet, but I had started walking toward freedom, and that mattered. Life didn't magically fix itself after I left Daniel. There were no fireworks, no triumphant soundtrack playing in the background. Just small, quiet moments of healing that stitched me back together, one breath, one step, one honest truth at a time. The first week at Maya's was heavy. I felt everything all at once: relief, guilt, fear, even loneliness. It's strange how leaving someone who controlled you can still make you feel like you abandoned them. That's how deep the manipulation runs. You start to believe their pain is yours to manage. Daniel texted me a few days later. "I miss you. Let's talk. I know I overreacted, but you pushed me. We can fix this if you just come home." Each message pulled at the old part of me, the part that wanted to make excuses for him, to believe in potential instead of patterns. But I didn't respond. I read each message, cried a little, then turned my phone over. I was beginning to understand that healing didn't mean waiting for him to admit he was wrong. It didn't mean getting closure from the person who hurt me. It meant closing the door myself, even if it trembled in its frame. I started therapy, and in one of my first sessions, my therapist asked me, "What would your life look like if no one else's emotions were your responsibility?" I couldn't answer at first. I had spent so long catering to Daniel's moods, managing his discomfort, tiptoeing through every day just to keep the peace. I didn't know what it felt like to live for myself. But over time, I learned. I wore what I wanted again: bright colors, bold earrings, lipstick on a Tuesday. I posted selfies without wondering who might get offended. I met with friends and laughed loudly, reclaiming the parts of me that had been slowly muted. One day, I ran into Jason at a coffee shop. It was awkward at first, but then he smiled and said, "You look lighter." I did feel lighter, because I wasn't apologizing for my existence anymore. Daniel texted a few more times over the months. His tone shifted, sometimes angry, sometimes sorrowful, sometimes full of charm. But I had learned something invaluable. His love was a leash, not a lifeline. I never replied. Instead, I focused on becoming the version of myself I had lost, no longer afraid to speak, to laugh, to feel joy without justification. The story didn't end with revenge, or some perfect new relationship. It ended with peace, with silence that didn't feel threatening, with mornings that began with my own reflection, not someone else's rules. And as I walked through the park one cool evening, watching the sun dip behind the trees, I realized, for the first time in years, I didn't ask myself if I was allowed to feel okay. I just was. He got mad ASAP too.